think it's still loading. Fantastic. Okay, well, welcome everyone. We're excited. Michelle and I are excited to share a little bit more about how we can exercise digital citizenship with AI in the classroom. So we learned a little bit about how to use AI, the history of AI, some of the technical aspects of the AI technology. But a lot of questions that we received yesterday, or at least in conversation, revolved around ethical considerations. And so we're hoping that our presentation can provide a bit of an overview with respect to ethical considerations, but more importantly, understanding the larger implications about having digital citizenship within the classroom. So we have a few objectives that are going to be guiding our conversation today. So primarily, we want to get on the same footing. That was a really bad dad joke because we're wanting to talk about a digital footprint. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that means, how we go about protecting ours, and making sure that ours is it's being used for in a safe way. And then we're also going to talk about how ChatGPT and other resources like Bard can help to prevent your privacy from being kind of impacted when you're using these tools. We'll also discuss some ethical considerations in using AI, as I mentioned. And then I'll also spend some time talking about how we can promote original content creation and critical thinking in the classroom while still being able to use AI. And that was another question we got is, yeah, we were kind of feeling like, wow, these tools are really powerful, but what's the kind of line between using them to generate original content or using them to help us generate our own original content? And then we'll talk a little bit about this concept called the digital native and what that means for our students in the classroom. So I know you kind of heard from Michelle and Liz and Hector a little bit yesterday. I'm Christina-Muñoz, so I'm a research analyst here at IDRA. So my contribution to our work here at our organization kind of is manyfold, but one of my something that I get to do in the role that I have here at our organization is to explore digital equity and how it impacts the classroom. So I'm really passionate about these topics. AI, as I mentioned yesterday in my introduction, is an area where I feel like I'm constantly learning and evolving in my understanding. So I'm just really excited to get to be part of this community conversation with you. As Michelle mentioned yesterday, we're not situating ourselves as expert necessarily, but we do want to kind of spark the conversation, get it flowing, and in real time, learn how we can be better consumers of these new tools being implemented in a really interesting way. And I'll pass it over to you, Michelle.
Okay, awesome. All right, so I'm not gonna introduce myself because, as Christina said, I did that yesterday. But on the next slide, I just wanna talk to you guys about a digital footprint. And basically a digital footprint refers to the trail of data that we leave behind when we do just various activities. It can include social media, online searches, website visits, and other forms of digital communication. A digital footprint can be permanent and it can potentially be accessed and viewed by others. It's important to be aware of one's digital footprint and take steps to protect your personal information and maintain a positive online presence. That's really important to share with students that information because we as online users, especially students, they just do whatever they want. And that's not okay in the sense that it's the Wild West, right? And they can just go in there, go to whatever sites they want, post whatever they want. And then later, as they get older, they realize that some of the stuff that they're posting, they need to go back and erase, right? Because it doesn't put them in a good light now. So again, you just kind of want to be aware of what a digital footprint is and how it can impact you. So that's a really important place to definitely talk to your students about their digital footprint, so they know that what they're doing online is that can impact their life. Now, ways to actually protect your digital footprint. You can use strong passwords, adjust your privacy settings, use a VPN, be mindful. Oh, and Dr. Redfield put including crazy email address names. Yes, that is a real, because I have and I'll just use my husband as an example. My husband, he had an email address that was beachbumrod@gmail.com. And then he was looking for a job. And I was like, yeah, that email address is not helping you find a job, And so, I mean, that's a perfect example. But yes, these are all things that students should be mindful of, and we need to show that to them. They don't necessarily know. They think they're being cute. I am totally insane. That was your son's email address. Oh my gosh, that is too funny. But yeah, so how do you protect it? Again, the strong passwords, other than just doing the things that show you in your best possible light. But yeah, the two-factor authentication is really important. Be cautious of what you share online, especially on social media. And you want to limit personal information in your posts. That's really important. One of the things that we're going to talk about as we go further on is anonymizing student information when you're in ChatGPT. We don't want what we think is the best practice. And, as we've mentioned, this is the Wild West right now, right? And so we may not have all the answers, but we know that if you do the right things to protect yourself, then ChatGPT or Bard, that you anonymize the information so that you don't just throw whatever student information in there, because we don't know what they're saving. We don't know what they're going to be doing with the information. So and as everyone says, when the product is free, you're the product, right? So we're not paying for ChatGPT. We're not paying for social media. We're not paying for Bard access. So what are they doing with that information? Because these are multi-million-dollar corporations that make money off of selling data. So we want to make sure that when you are using any of these resources with your students, that that you let them know not to put in their personal information, that not to put in their personal information. And I can kind of keep harping on this, but I'll move on. But again, protecting your digital footprint is really important. I mean, when you watch the news and you see that someone's being charged with a crime, it's usually their digital footprint that the cops are looking at. So, that's really important. It's like, keep your digital footprint sacred. All right, so we'll go ahead and move on to the next slide. And so privacy and security. So as Hector showed us yesterday, there is a way in ChatGPT and with Bard where you can clear your settings. And so if you have put anything into Bard or ChatGPT that you feel might be compromised security, then you can go in there and you can clear it, right? So it doesn't live there forever. But if you don't clear it, then the terms and the terms of use allow them to use that data. I think we're also training ChatGPT as we use it, and we're doing the same thing with Bard. Think about Facebook. Remember when, and not everybody's going to remember when Facebook started. I'm looking at you, Christina, but when Facebook first started, you couldn't tag your friends. Then it came up with tagging your friends. But think about that as a use case scenario, in the sense that in real time, the Facebook AI was trying to place that face to a name. And every time we checked it, that yes, it got it right, we were training Facebook's facial recognition software that they were getting it right. And so now it is so good that it doesn't really even ask you, is this the right person? It just automatically attaches a name to a face if you know that person. So, so either way, we are training these systems. So we want to make sure that as we train them, that we're training them mindfully and we're not putting in our personal information. You want to protect student data. So you want to anonymize everywhere you can. So you don't want to put, Christina's going to show you an amazing session. I think it's tomorrow on the research process. And so as you're putting information into these systems, you want to make sure that you anonymize any personal data so that as it's analyzing the information, it doesn't necessarily take into consideration personal stuff, right? So we want to anonymize. You want to trust your gut. If it feels weird, don't do it. That's a really important point, because if it's asking you for personal information, then I would just jump ship and not even put it in there. I wouldn't even use that site. So it's really important that you trust your gut and that you know what signs to look for, so that when something feels off, you know why it feels off. And then you want to use trusted sites. So ChatGPT is a trusted site, Bard is a trusted site, but there's so many different websites out there. And Dr. Raphael has a great point here. Look for the HTTPS. S stands for secured at the beginning of a URL. And so you want to make sure that the site is secured before you put in any information. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to the next slide. And so what I want you guys to do right now is we're going to take a couple of minutes and you're going to go into ChatGPT and you're going to check your settings. And just so that you know where they're at, and what you're seeing on screen right now is a GIF that actually walks you through the steps of how to clear your chat history. And so this is for ChatGPT, but you also have the instructions on the left. So basically you go and you click on the 3 dots of your name, and then you can clear conversations, or you can go into the settings and you can click data controls and turn off your chat history completely. Now, if you want to do that in Bard, what you do, there's a GIF on this next slide that actually walks you through it as well. And so Bard is going to keep your data, and it keeps it for, I want to say, like 6 to 9 months, unless you turn that setting off. And there's an auto delete that takes it. Okay, so 36 months is the longest length of time, but you might want to change that to just 3 months, or you might want to change it to less than that, or you might want to just do auto delete all activity manually, right? So you have options. You can go in there and clear everything, or you can leave it in there because you want to refer back to it. But again, these privacy settings are important just to at least know where they're at and that you can change them. So I'll stop talking. We'll give you a couple of minutes, and what you'll do is you'll just check your settings in ChatGPT. Now, I lied. I'm going to keep talking. I'm not 100% sure about the free accounts because I have a paid account for ChatGPT, but I'm curious if you have the free account with ChatGPT, if the settings look any different. So if they do, please feel free to come off mic and let us know.
It looks the same to me in ChatGPT.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much, Ogechi. It should be the same in Bard. It should look exactly the same in Bard, because in Bard I have a free account. I don't even know if they offer paid accounts at this point. I think Bard is still really fresh.
Give everyone a few more seconds, and then we can hop on over to discuss a little bit more about some ethical considerations when using AI. So I think a good introduction to this discussion is through privacy and data security, as Michelle introduced to us just now. We know that AI benefits us in numerous ways, including personalized learning, administrative task automation, as we're finding, it's so useful in areas of developing lesson plans, helping us to draft grant proposal outlines. For me, for example, it helps me a lot to synthesize, large quantities of literature I have to consume before classes. It enhances accessibility to information, but the uses in which it provides capabilities for, it does present ethical considerations that, teachers, users must really carefully address when using or implementing in the classroom. Primarily, privacy and data security, as Michelle talked at length about. We know that these systems require extensive data to function effectively. So this can include sensitive student information. It can start recording learning habits, performance metrics, and other sorts of data. So ensuring that it's collected, stored, and used in a manner that respects users' privacy and maintains data security is really essential. And so again, not to harp on these privacy and data tips, but they're really important to sharing with your students so that they not only know how to protect their digital footprint, but to know their privacy rights while interacting with these technologies. Another concept that we wanted to discuss a little bit was related to bias and fairness. So I think yesterday rather, when we're learning about kind of the history and the technical aspect of AI systems, they are systems, right, that were developed through training, and some of that training could contain bias. And so when we're interacting with AI systems or the information that they generate when we interact with them, they could amplify certain biases. And so when we're interacting with this information that's generated based on our prompting, we may ask those critical questions. How does the information that's being presented perpetuate bias or certain unfair ideas? And so when we're thinking about how to train these tools in the way that we're discussing with them, I think ChatGPT is a really interesting example, as Hector mentioned, that it won't allow you to ask questions that are not factually accurate. For example, why is the earth flat, right? So it'll actually try to tell you that it's not. In fact, there's extensive research arguing against. So that's an interesting case, but in the sense of other types of AI technology, it's important to ask critical questions related to the information that it generates for you in a way that minimizes bias, promotes equitable learning. Another third kind of consideration to keep in mind is that AI can sometimes be what's called a black box, with decisions and recommendations that might be hard to interpret or understand when you first kind of generate these ideas based on basic prompting. So it can lack transparency in a way that might make it difficult for users to trust it, right? Because again, it's simply a search. It's an algorithmic search based on available data within, it's using it to create these results. So when we're engaging with them, we should leverage the AI tools to provide clear explanations, decisions, or suggestions that make sense for our use, right? And I think that it goes back to Michelle's really great presentation on prompt engineering, trying to ask the right specific questions to elicit the kinds of response that are useful, but are also transparent. So another component of that is being a critical consumer of research and online material. As we know, in our practices, it's really important to not just simply take information as presented, but rather ask those deeper questions about okay, what bias does it introduce, or what perspective is this information being relayed to me? Is there another perspective that we can consider that might help us to understand this subject or this topic area a little bit more deep? And I'll go into some other tips on my next slide, but I just wanted to introduce that idea for consideration and even conversation. So if questions or ideas pop up for you during my kind of conversation here, please, I invite you to use the chat or come off mute, just so we could talk a little bit more about it, right? Because again, I'm not the expert in this area, but I do have like considerations that I felt that I wanted to probe a little bit deeper when I was first starting to use some of these tools. So if those kinds of feelings or questions come up for you, I definitely invite you to place them in the chat. A fourth kind of consideration is this idea of a student's autonomy of learning, producing original work and avoiding plagiarism. This is a big one. As we know, students are going to use these tools whether we prohibit them or not. They are tools. That's what they're designed to do. They're designed to really prompt and promote our learning, but it could, in the student's perspective, be a way to kind of shortcut or shortchange the process of learning. And so while it can personalize the learning experience, there is a risk of over-relying on it that could diminish the student's ability to direct their own learning, explore topics outside of suggested content or presented content in the classroom, and or even thwart critical thinking skills. So the balance is crucial, and we can talk on the next slide about maybe some ideas or tips that can help to promote student autonomy in their learning. But I think, again, the first step is introducing these tools in the classroom and talking about the implications in a very pragmatic way with students. Students are a lot more, they're a lot more critical than we sometimes give them credit for, and they will learn how to use these tools effectively and ethically if we give them the opportunity to learn more about the back end of these tools and how and why best practices are important to engage with when we're using them in our own learning. And then the last concept is accessibility and inclusivity, ensuring students have all access or equal access to AI-enhanced education. This is really important when we're thinking about the digital divide and exacerbating what's called the homework gap. So we want to use these tools in such a way that don't exacerbate those educational disparities with respect to access to technology, access to internet at the home. And so as an educator, how can we think of ways to not just challenge the digital divide, but take steps to ensure that these tools are available to all students, that they can be leveraged to engage with homework or student assignments in a very equitable way. So when used thoughtfully and responsibly, these tools can be really powerful in the education space, but it's really crucial that we consider these various buckets of ethical considerations, not just as an afterthought, but as a way to really guide the way we implement and use these tools in the classroom. So again, on this slide, we're just sharing some tips for teachers, educators, users to share with students or young people when introducing AI into the classroom or into projects. So the first one you see there is using AI tools for learning and not just answers, right? So we know that students are going to use these tools for homework or assignment help. So it would be beneficial to instruct them how to use these tools for understanding concepts, broad concepts, rather than copying answers or asking them specific questions from the homework, right? So the goal should be learning and understanding how to arrive at the answer, not just getting the correct result. The second tip that we provide here is that ensuring that we ensure students understand what constitutes as plagiarism and why it's a serious offense. I know my kind of first serious introduction to the idea of plagiarism was introduced kind of in my third or fourth year of high school, but it was really hammered in college when we're starting to develop research reports or engage with more academic material. But introducing plagiarism and consequences early on can really help students understand the difference between generating content in AI for direct use or generating content for understanding and enhancing their learning about a topic. So some of this instruction can be supplemented with examples and explanations on kinds of plagiarism. So copying pasting is a primary one that students might use for homework or assignments, but paraphrasing without attribution is also really important. And I think there's some gray lines here when it comes to using AI generated content that is essentially paraphrased and doesn't have direct citation, but how can students take the information that they generate in AI, paraphrase it in their own words, and try to find additional sources that can be cited as a way to promote and support the ideas. So, having a conversation about citing work with proper citation, about combating plagiarism through various strategies like paraphrasing and or idea development is a really great way to help students learn this difference between copying and pasting generated information and using it as a way to promote their own learning. Another tip that we discussed here is explaining the importance of citing sources. So kind of similar to the idea of plagiarism, it's connected, right? But providing detailed instructions on how to correctly attribute quotes, ideas, or data from others' work. This is going to be a great practice even through college. So again, introducing these concepts pretty early on is really beneficial to students, especially as they're engaging in internet-based research. That will just only serve to advance their research writing skills and perpetuate best practices in research. The fourth tip that we provide there is to encourage students to actually use plagiarism checker tools, right? If they know about AI tools, they should also know about plagiarism checker tools that also use AI. So for example, Turnitin is a really popular one. Grammarly is another. In fact, I'll share some more tools with you, and I think Michelle will also do the same in a subsequent presentation, and I'll do so in my research process presentation. But there are various sources out there that you can introduce to students early on as a way to mitigate, again, the gotcha, right? I know that you're using AI, and I'm going to make sure that I get you, right? So it can eliminate that kind of gap in trust, or maybe that anxiety for students about wanting to use it to help them versus like using it to just directly copy answers. So just be bold and trust students that they will use this themselves, right? And it's a way to not only serve as a safety measure for them, but an educational tool in understanding what constitutes plagiarism, and how, again, do we borrow ideas, but use them in a way to help enhance our idea generation. Another tool or another tip is to encourage students to express their own ideas, views, and understandings of a given subject matter, and practice idea mapping with AI. I use this a lot in my work as a student in college. So in grad school, it's really important that, especially as you're developing your literature review, that you're connecting ideas. And a great way to do this is to use AI to help you idea map. So you can encourage students to maybe think about what they already know about a subject. How does it connect to other subjects that might be relevant? What feelings, opinions, questions does this topic prompt for them? But what questions do they still have, right? I think engaging in this critical dialogue before the introduction or implementation of AI can really help promote original thinking, but it can also challenge students to think deeply about what questions I can ask AI to elicit answers or ideas that are more advanced or can advance my way of thinking. And then lastly, encourage students to evaluate any information generated in AI through careful prompting. We had a really cool conversation yesterday about the meta evaluation of this information, and I think that still rings true here in this conversation. So what prompts can elicit what kinds of information? How can you ask more specific questions to generate better results? So asking learners, are points made in the text the most important points to consider? Which of these points are the most important? Why? Does the chat choose the right points to focus on? What are some additional perspectives that might be important to really understanding this topic area? So these, again, are just kind of the top line tips in terms of promoting original content creation and critical thinking, but I hope they at least start a conversation for you either internally or can be amongst you all in kind of how to leverage these tools in a bit more effective and ethical way.
Okay, so now we're going to kind of talk a little bit about the term digital native. In the chat, I went ahead and I posted these two questions, and what we'd like for you to do is take a couple of minutes to, we're actually going to give you 5 minutes to think about these terms, and do you consider yourself a digital native? So again, in the chat, just write out what you think the term digital native means to you, and if you consider yourself a digital native. Okay, Ogechi writes, kids born after the founding of Facebook. And Gina writes, digital native is someone who grew up in the digital world. I am not a digital native. So my 21-year-old is, my 30-year-old is not quite, and I am not a digital native. That's from Dr. Redfield. That's pretty funny. I think it means someone who grew up using computers. I am not a digital native, writes Stephanie. I'm curious about you, Christiana, being that you're fairly young, how do you feel about this term? What is the definition to you? Have you heard it before?
You want me to speak or go in the chat?
Yeah, whatever's easier for you, whatever you feel most comfortable.
Yeah, sure. So I've actually never heard this term. We kind of joke around, we call them iPad babies. That's what we call like the babies right now, because like you always see them with an iPad. I think a digital native doesn't necessarily have to like correlate to age, because even though I'm younger, I'm not very technologically advanced. I think like I still struggle. I think a digital native kind of refers to anybody whose environment requires them to adapt to using technology regularly, because that could be in your workforce or even just kind of like communication with your family, right? Like I've seen I've seen bilingual people in my family have to adapt to technology to speak to younger generations, right, who don't speak their language or their native language. So yeah, I think it can refer to different ages, and it just kind of depends like what resources you have and whether you have the education personally.
Thank you. That's a great addition. I appreciate your perspective. How about you, Professor Roya? I mean, I know you're at Texas A&M College Station, so you're working with students of all ages. So what do you think about that term?
Yes, actually, I'm about 30, early 30s, and I'm in the multilingual, context here. I mean, this context is very diverse, and I could say that I prefer digital communication channels such as texting, instant messaging, social media over traditional forms of communication. But I didn't grow up in digital environment, so I'm not digital native. But I try to literate myself and become, to expand my knowledge in this context and to know more about it.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. Let's go to the next slide. The reason we asked this question is because we wanted to give you the definition. So what is a digital native? And it's a person that's born or brought up during the age of digital technology and therefore familiar with computers and the internet from an early age. That is the definition of what a digital native is. But if we go to the next slide, I want to know if you guys feel like that term is problematic. Before I give you my opinion, I want to hear from you guys. And so you can put it in the chat or you can come off mute. But do you think that that term with that definition is problematic, and why or why not? Thank you, Ogechi. You're a great webinar facilitator.
Yeah, isn't that great? She repeats the question, that sort of thing. I have my 21-year-old digital native with me, so she might want to add something, but you could peek in and say hi if you like. You get in there. I have to change the background. But so on that definition, my son would be, but he definitely prefers reading physical books, which she is not that way. She will, I think of it as like part of her life is on the phone, on social media, streaming services, she pointed out. So a lot of her life revolves around getting access to those things, being immediately available to those things. So I think there's something about how one considers their life to be so connected to digital resources, something like that.
Thank you.
I just want to amplify Christina's point about access to digital tools and connectivity. Sometimes it can be maybe urban focused, and we forget about like rural communities where access is not quite the same. Yeah, just I think that that's something to kind of bring up is even if you're living in a certain time where most people may have access to a cell phone, it doesn't necessarily mean that you yourself are going to be, using those tools.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Ogechi. And so I'll go ahead and insert my opinion because it's a great segue. Yeah, I mean, the term digital native, I understand that it means someone born within a digital age. However, just like you said, it doesn't mean that they're born with the digital skills to effectively use online tools or the internet, right? We still need to work with the students and train them on, or educate them, I should say, on the most effective ways to use digital resources, digital devices, and then how to protect themselves, because they don't know how to do that inherently. Just because they are used to using the devices doesn't mean they know how to keep themselves safe. So that's one of the things that I wanted to get across for this section, because digital native, and again, it depends on where you're at in your career, your life, and all those things. But digital native was one of those terms that was really popular in education for a while. And I think what it did was it kind of let people off the hook for educating students on how to be effective, because they're like, oh, they were born with this. They use this stuff all the time. They are always on an iPad, blah, blah, whatever, it's like they know more than me. And that's not necessarily true. They may be more comfortable with technology. They may be more willing to dive in head first, but we need to be those lifeguards that remind them, don't dive in head first. You can actually crack your skull. We need for you guys to be safe. So, that was one of the reasons why we wanted to show you this. It looks like Roya wrote that I think not all individuals born in a digital age necessarily possess the same level of digital literacy or skills. Exactly. And you said it in a much more concise, beautiful way, Roya. Does anybody else want to share, Stephanie or Christiana, as why you see that term might be problematic, or maybe it's not problematic?
I 100% agree with the concept of just assuming that just because somebody can use it, meaning that they can use it efficiently or even especially ethically. I don't think we talk about ethical consumption at all in general with anything we do. So yeah, I really like that outlook. That's something I never thought about just because, yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, we'll go ahead and we'll move on. And so the next thing that we're going to do is I'm going to show you guys a couple of resources, and we're going to I'm going to create a lesson using AI. And I almost feel like, I don't know if I should do this because you guys have already been creating lessons. But I do want to show you a couple of resources. We have 3 that I'm going to show you. We have Canva, CurryPod, and ChatGPT. And ChatGPT, we used that yesterday. I'm not going to show you an example of it. You know how to do a lesson plan in that. But I'll show you the other 2. Then what we're going to do is we're going to break you out into groups of 2. And I want you guys to work together to create a lesson plan on digital citizenship for your class and whatever that looks like. And so you can bounce ideas off each other. You can play with the tools together. The CurryPod resource that I'm going to show you, it's free, but you can only have 5 lessons at a given time. Okay. And what CurryPod does is it basically creates a lesson for you by using prompts, but you can only have 5 at any given time. I tell you that in advance because as you play with it, if you like something, you can always save it, download it, and then delete it, and then create another one. There's, I'm trying to keep this free for you guys, right? But if you love it and you want to pay for it, knock yourself out, right? Whatever works for you. But I'll go ahead and I'll share my screen. And the first resource I'm going to show you is CurryPod. Let's see. Let me get, there it is. Okay. Okay, so what you're looking at, and again, it's spelled CurryPod, and I will put the link in the chat if Ogechi hasn't already done it. I really do love your help. I'm just teasing. Okay, yep, she did it. I love it. You're an honorary IDRA staff member, so I love it. Okay, so yeah, so CurryPod is basically a teacher support app, right? It's all about creating lessons using AI. So what I'm going to do is, you see the upgrade button here, but I'm not going to worry about that because I'm not going to upgrade right now. And I'm going to click on create lessons. And so what it's going to do is it's going to ask you for the topic of your lesson. And so I think I'm just going to stick with the water cycle because that's easy. And then you get to choose what grade level. So we can go all the way up to 12th grade, professional development. It gives you a wide range from first grade all the way to PD. I don't know if y'all can see that all right. Okay, good. So I'm going to just do it for professional development and see what happens. Then I'm going to click on do magic. And then what it's going to do is it's going to generate a slide deck on the water cycle. And it's going to fill in each of the slides. It's going to have an image and it's going to have a few words to describe the water cycle. And it's also giving you an opportunity to bring in your students. So this slide is a word cloud. So what it's trying to, this is that critical thinking moment of the class where you want to do the pre-assessment, what do you already know about the water cycle? And so what the students would do is they would click and drag a word here and it would create a word cloud. Then we have what the water cycle is, the concepts, just kind of like a quick did you know. But as you can see, I didn't do anything other than type in water cycle and choose a level. And so it automatically creates these slides for you. If you click present, there is a way. Do you see on the bottom, it says click here to let your students join? And so you can click on this. Let me turn the volume off. You can click on this and then, I don't know how familiar you guys are with like Quizlet or some of the other quiz apps out there. It's kind of like that. So you go to curie.live and then you put in this PIN number and then people can join and then they can interact with the slide deck. So someone's joined, which is awesome. It's probably, I don't know, I'm going to guess who it is. Is it Carol? Can I see that smile on your face? No, it's not you. Well, so you can join it. And then once people join, You can move to the, okay, so awesome, several people. Let me give you all a minute to go ahead and join if everybody wants to do it. Awesome. Okay, so let's move on. So now I'm going to go to the next slide. And actually, let's go to the first one. Let's do the few words about the water cycle. So let's go ahead and see if you guys can interact with that. I'm going to hit play. And so in a few words, describe the water cycle. So it gives everybody 2 minutes to fill in their responses. If you want to give me a thumbs up if you're done, then I can stop it earlier. And you can just use your reactions or show me your thumb, whichever's easier. So it looks like 2 people have responded. So what's nice is that you can see who's responding, so you can kind of check engagement there. And then you can do a 30-second timer. And I'm going to go ahead and just hit stop for now. And then what I'm hoping it's going to do is show the word cloud. So let's go ahead and click OK. And here's everything that you as students have entered. So you see, it's a really nice way to, like, again, I mean, seconds to create the lesson. Boom, you already have an interactive tool that you can work with the students. You can edit it all you'd like. You don't have, it doesn't have to remain with the images that it chose or with the points that it chose. You can edit that. All right, so let me go ahead and let me stop sharing for a sec. So what do you guys think of that tool? That's pretty interesting, right? It's fast. All right, so let me get out of this.
Michelle, I had a quick question on the CurryPod, the first kind of panel you get to. It had a drop down that said learning objectives. Is that a way for you to actually add particular objectives that you want to make sure are on slides?
Yes, in fact, let me get back to the home screen. So I'm going to end the live session. Give me a sec. And then I'm very new to CurryPod. So again, you guys are going to play with it and y'all are going to have, hopefully have some fun with it. But if you look here on this navigation, so I'm still in the water cycle activity, you have all of these different elements that you can add to your slide deck. You can do a comprehension feedback repeat, a check-in, you can do SEL activities, you can add different AI lesson hooks, you can do different things with all of these different elements. You can do exit tickets. So you can add and subtract to your slide deck by putting in these elements. Like I said, it kind of, if you look at the top of the slides, it gives you, I guess, like a quick little overview of what this slide is, right? So this is a personal feedback, whereas this is an open question. The slide 8 is a drawing, slide 9 is a poll. But if you want to do a checkout poll, you can add that to the end. And let's go ahead and do that really quickly. Let me move my slide here. I'm going to add a checkout poll, and I'm going to say, do your magic. I'm, again, not typing anything in. It just knows that this is a water cycle activity. So it added how confident are you with the course content? How confident are you with today's material? How confident do you feel about the material? So there are 4 different slides. You can pick one, or you can put all 4, or you can regenerate. But I'm going to go ahead and just add this slide, and then I'm going to move this slide where I want it. So I'm just going to add it to the end. So again, just really fast, so if you want to add a check-in, you can do that. Let's see here, it's 10:15. All right, so the next thing I wanted to show you guys was Canva. And so how familiar are you guys with Canva? Has anybody used it? Yeah. Okay, cool. Then I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. But one of the things that I really love about the new AI features is you can go into docs into the docs. You can have it magic write by choosing the little plus sign and then choosing magic write, and then you would just use the AI. So what is the water cycle? And so I am going to enter that in. It's going to create the heading. It's going to give me the content. And then I'll just give it a couple more prompts. So I'm going to say, why is it important to protect the water cycle? Okay, and so again, it's just spitting out information. I don't have to, it's just like using ChatGPT. So then once I'm done, what I can do is I can click on convert. And then what it's going to do is it's going to give me options on slide decks. So I can take it from docs to decks pretty quickly. And there's a tutorial on the Padlet already for this. So this way you don't forget, but basically you just kind of scroll through and you look at the different designs it's offering. And so I'll click on what is the water cycle, and then I can kind of view. And again, this is just everything that came straight off of that doc. So it goes again from that doc and that outline to this deck in no time. If you want, you can ask ChatGPT to create a lesson and then bring it into the doc. And then let me actually take you back to the doc for a sec, because what the AI is doing is it's looking for headers to create the slide. So if you copy and paste from ChatGPT into Canva, what you'll want to do is you'll want to make sure that you have slide headers. And so you would just click on this little plus here, and then you would either make it a heading 1 or a heading 2. And then that's going to give it the information it needs to understand that this is another slide. So again, do you guys have any questions or anything about those two resources that I just showed you?
It's pretty amazing. A lot of things I just didn't know about Canva just now. Could you go over again how you got to the doc? Was it?
Sure. I'll go back to my home screen. And then you can just click on docs here. Or you can, you can click on it up here as well. So you have 2 places to get to it. And so I'm going to actually use this lesson that Hector did yesterday on, let's see here, objective, materials, warm up, begin by. No, I'm not going to do that because it's going to take me too much time. All right, so what I'm going to do is we're going to actually break now. I'm going to create breakout rooms. It's going to be 2 people per room, and then I want you guys to pick a tool and create a lesson. Then we're going to come back and we're going to share. So you'll have 10 minutes. Yeah, 10 minutes to do this, and then we will come back and then we will share a little bit about our experience. Welcome back, everyone. And so what we're going to do, thank you for taking the time to play. I don't know that y'all had enough time to actually finish anything because it was only 10 minutes. But what you did work on, if you'd like to share it with us, you can put it in the chat, the link, and then I'll put it on the Padlet, or you can put it in the Padlet yourself. But what I'd like to do is just take a couple of minutes, just 5 minutes all together, for you guys to share what your experience was with the tools and maybe something that surprised you. And so we'll go in groups. And so we'll start with Dr. Redfield, if you don't mind just kind of sharing a little bit about what your experience was.
Sure. We have worked with Christina, and the link is over there in the chat. And so you want to share our experience of it?
Yeah. Like, what'd you think of the tool?
Oh, it was awesome, because there's It's more than just a template, right? It is very similar to what you had. So there are all these pieces, and then it was very easy to just have another question that we put over in the right, and then 3 or 4 slides would show up, and we could pick one of the slides we like and put it in the place where we wanted, and could reorganize the slides very easily. We thought it was going to be drag, actually, a slide from the left over to the right, but it's not. But you can drag and drop the slides along the bottom, right? And the Curie pod is what we were using. And we started with computer literacy. It was very, very top level, and didn't have a lot of what I would thought would be included, but you could add all those things. So, and it was nice in terms of all those different options of things you can do as a teacher to pick from. So all those different options are there. The creative thought is different, right? It's not, I have to come up with what is it I'm going to do. I have a set of options I could pick from, and then I can modify from there, and I could always add something else. So does that answer your question? That's
perfect. And it sounds like you were using Curie pod.
Yes, Curie pod. Right. And we included a couple slides about digital citizenship, if anyone wants to look at that. We have 13 slides, I see.
Okay, awesome. I'll share that on the Padlet. Ogechi, do you want to talk about what your team, like what y'all's experience was with, and what tool did you use?
Yep, sure. We used Curie pod as well. And I was just continuing from the homework on water scarcity in the Middle East. I thought, what could it make in slides? I thought it was just great. One of the things that we talked about together was like how so much of this is thinking smarter, working smarter, not harder. We also talked about how low tech, how we could do this in a low tech way, because of all of the distractions that come with using like a Chromebook or, device. What could this look like if, we were doing, for example, like, I'm thinking of word cloud. Maybe they have them on whiteboards, and you have a class job, which is to collect, like, data collector. And as that's coming in, they can put it in quickly or something like that, where it is less about the device and more about the learning that's happening. And I think that it's definitely possible here to kind of do a hybrid of both. It was easy to work with.
Good. Yeah, that's what we want, right? We want to make our lives easier. We want to, like you said, work smarter, not harder. So yeah, no, that's awesome. And then the last group, Stephanie, would you like to, or Roya, would y'all like to, whoever wants to share?
Sure. We kind of did both. We started out with the Curie pod, and then we had a few extra minutes, so we moved to Canva. I think with Curie pod, it's really interactive, which is awesome, whereas it felt like Canva was a little bit more just informative of a presentation. The one thing that we were kind of playing with on Curie pod is a way to, I guess, not overstimulate, is the way I see it as, is like there's a big picture in the background with white lettering, and like kind of a way to, I guess, if there are ways to bring that a little bit less and not overdo it, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's an awesome, because you're thinking about that differentiation, right? And so you can have the same slides and present it to one group, whereas the other slides, you might want to, just like you said, don't want to overstimulate them, so you want to edit them for that. But what my hope is that these tools are going to give you the time to do that, versus before you're spending a lot of time making the lesson plan, you don't necessarily have the time to differentiate as well. So hopefully that'll save you guys some time. All right, we're exactly at 10:40. It's time for a break. So we'll do a 5-minute break, then we'll come back at 10:45, and then Liz is going to show you time-saving tips and tricks, and she's probably going to show you Curie pod also. Again, so this isn't the first time you're going to see it or the last time, so you'll have some opportunity to play with it. So be back at 10:45. When you come back, there's going to be more people with us, so don't be alarmed. All right, we'll see y'all in a little bit.